Welcome to Blamestorming. Blamestorming. In a post-truth world, there's plenty of blame to go around. 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 Join Dave Cyrus and Marissa Smith as they blamestorm about today's hot topics.
I think you're probably one.
I am, yeah. That's... Your mic good?
Yeah.
Hey guys, welcome to Blamestorming. I'm Marissa Smith. I've got Dave Cyrus with me.
Hello.
I've got Peter Brocker with me.
Hey guys.
And I've got Gary Levitt with me.
That's me. Hello.
So, Dave, how have you been? Last time you were on, you were out in L.A.
I was in L.A. Yeah, I was doing stuff. I went to Temecula, which, according to everyone else I've met, I'm the only person to have a positive experience in Temecula.
What is Temecula?
It's just a town, like an hour and a half outside LA. It's halfway between LA and San Diego, which is like 100 miles apart and takes 8 hours to drive. So I was there, like some party. It was fun. A lot of children at this party, which I haven't been to a lot of parties with children. And like, you guys look like adults. What's like the protocol for doing drugs in front of kids? Now, I mean, like vapes, like vape pens that are mostly indistinguishable from like e-cigarettes. Is it wrong to get high literally in front of a child with those things?
When you say children, do you mean like actual children, or
Yes.
do you mean just young people?
Toddlers. You know,
Oh, okay.
from like baby to like 6.
Oh,
I don't know. They were like baby to 10 years. Just whatever age you're worried about, assume that's included.
Is it wrong to drink in front of them?
No,
There is
it's
the answer.
not.
That's the answer.
Well,
Yeah, but I've also never had a beer and then accidentally blown my beer into a child's face and gotten that child high.
yeah.
that's true. Well,
This is true.
well, I didn't do that either.
That's good.
And it's these are vapes, so it's not like the same thing you can get, the smoke in the face and actually get high off it.
Yeah.
But I mean, you're still smoking drugs. It's like, but I mean, it's the same thing where like if I'm on a plane and, when I fly, obviously, like all people, I do an enormous amount of edibles. So when I fly, I'm really high. And sometimes if I'm sitting next to a child, I actually do feel kind of bad. I feel like I'm doing something wrong just being this high next to a kid.
That's the bullshit stigma of drugs in this country. It's not like that in Europe. There's less of a stigma. For some reason, alcohol is completely accepted, but anything marijuana end up is worse. But the most messed up I've ever been in my life is on alcohol, by far.
That's fair.
The most dangerous drug, without a doubt.
And I've done some serious drugs. But yeah, I feel like I was in the least control drunk. But I mean, I've never done like the major drugs. Like I haven't done, your cracks or your heroines. I've done like, things like weed and like, mushrooms, stuff like that. This, the fun ones. Mm-hmm. The ones that you don't see a lot of documentaries about ruining your lives.
And you
over.
probably never blacked out on those.
I've never blacked out on anything. I've never blacked out on liquor either.
Mm-hmm.
I've never gotten drunk enough that I didn't remember what I did. Mm-hmm. I've only gotten drunk enough that I could get away with telling someone I didn't remember what I did.
Maybe it's just me then.
That's like the best case scenario of getting drunk.
Yeah.
That's like, oh no, I know what I did, but you're not going to call me on it because you think I don't.
Right, exactly. But no, I've never forgotten anything. So I don't even know what it means to be that drunk that you literally black out.
I don't remember second semester sophomore year at college.
I thought you were straight edge.
No, that was in high school.
Oh.
In college, I drank a lot. But I guess I was trying to make up for it in high school. But I don't know. I guess my question would be is like, would you have felt comfortable being drunk in front of these kids?
Well, comfortable being drunk in front of kids? Yes, of course, because you should be drunk in front of kids. They're children. You shouldn't have to accommodate them in any way.
Very Santa Claus of you.
Yeah. But I've never been drunk in front of children, I don't think. I've been high in front of a lot of kids. But, I maintain it pretty well.
Get a real sense of your lifestyle. I will say, I think that like, if you had smoked before you went to the party, would you feel at all bad?
Oh, I didn't feel bad smoking in front of them either. I'm just asking the question. But yeah, no, I wouldn't have felt bad. I mean, almost every, like Thanksgiving, me and my brothers are getting high before we walk in the door. And there's always children there. I think and that's most people, right? Most people aren't going to Thanksgiving sober.
A lot of parents get high with their kids. Around. Not with them, but like with them around.
Yeah.
Were the parents smoking?
At this thing in Temecula? No, this was just me. This was, I was mostly the only one getting high. I mean, other people were a little bit, and there was like some drink, but it wasn't like they were sloppy drunk either. But it's more like other people at the party were like, I didn't take 2 days off of work just to have to accommodate a bunch of children. They're kind of like, if I'm taking work off, I'm flying out here, I should be able to get stupid drunk. I don't care about any kids.
Right.
It's a good way to relate to kids,
You get along better.
Mm-hmm.
I agree with that, and I think below a certain age, they're not going to remember it anyway. So,
Yeah.
And after you smoke, you won't remember it either, so it's great.
But it's like ever like the first time you smoked weed as a kid, or first time you smelled weed. I think a lot of us were like, "Oh, that's what this has been all my life." Because I feel like the first time you smoke weed,
Daddy's cologne.
Yeah, everyone's like remembering instantly how many other places you've smelled this in your childhood. You're like, "Oh, that smells like the art teacher's room." I remember like when someone told me that what crack smelled like, and being like, I definitely, there's like, oh, it smells like burning rubber. And I'm like, there was a room in camp that always smelled like burning rubber.
We went to very different camps.
I was in Brooklyn.
That's
my first, I remember in camp when another, like a 6-year-old pulled a switchblade on me and cut my water wings. I went to that kind of camp.
My introduction to mushrooms was at a Grateful Dead show, and I thought mushrooms smelled like patchouli for years.
Oh, that's funny. I only did acid once,
Mm-hmm.
and it was because my friends made me go to a 4th of July fish show. And once there, I realized I never thought I would do acid, but I was like, I'm going to be here for like 8 hours, and I might kill myself if I don't do much harder drugs than weed. That was just the decision I ended up making.
You kind of have to at a Fish concert, I think.
Yeah, well, they all said, they're like, trust me, once you're there, you're going to love it. And I went there with an open mind, and then was within an hour was like, I need the hardest drugs I've ever done right now.
Not what any band really wants to hear, I don't think.
I think Fish knows who their audience is.
It helps.
So, so while we're on the subject, you guys, I've never met you guys before, but do you guys want to tell me every drug you've done?
you want to take.
You don't have to.
No, thanks.
I feel like, I did not expect a yes to that question.
The lead in with mushrooms followed by the no thanks leaves me with like a lot of questions.
Right, that's the thing. You've already admitted to mushrooms, which means you've done much worse.
Yeah.
And I know I'm not trying to offend you. You're a nice guy. We know each other.
You
a
don't
little
know
bit.
me yet.
I mean, we know each other a little bit enough for me to say, yeah, you definitely look like you've done more than mushrooms. No offense.
No comments.
Yeah, and by that I mean you look cool.
Thank you. I'm happy to play the part.
Anyway, I've
never done mushrooms.
Oh, you should. It's good for you. I mean, don't do them a lot. Everyone I know who did a lot of mushrooms ended up being really weird.
Never done mushrooms. I've robo-buzzed a couple of times. But
Oh,
like that's-
Robitussin?
Yeah.
On purpose, or did you just take too much?
No, that was on purpose.
Did you throw up?
No, I didn't.
Because I remember when I was a freshman in college, I was the only one on like the whole group of like my floor who didn't robo-trip, and they all threw up like on the walls everywhere. And then we had to like get like a thing because the cleaning ladies threatened to quit.
No,
And I was on their side. I was like, guys, we owe them an apology. We had one guy. There was one guy there who was a little bit of a Stephen Miller, who was saying like, I think they're just complaining too much. They're paid to pick up our stuff. And I'm like, no, shut up. Stop it. You're a really bad person. You know what? Now that you think of it, maybe it was Stephen Miller. We're like the same age. No, I don't think it was.
I didn't throw up, but I was like drinking water with it. So like, I think that probably helped.
Did you like it?
Yeah. So like I did it twice. And the second time I did it is when I was like kind of like walking around and I was like the only one awake. Like all of my friends were like either at parties or something like that. I ended up by myself, and I went to college in New Hampshire. So like it was just lightly snowing, and I just decided to just take a walk, and the snow was like glistening from the lights on the side of the path, and it looked like just kind of like glistening pennies. And so I was just like, oh, like, you know, like I'm gonna follow like this like copper path to wherever it takes me, and then took me like all the way across campus, and then it was this one dorm room that had like one light open, like on or whatever. And so like I went to that room, just happened to be one of my friends' rooms. And they're just like, what's up? And I'm like, oh, like I'm robo-buzzing. And they're just like, oh, hang out. It's snowing, like blah, 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 chill. And so she had this kind of like Alice in Wonderland poster, like, you know, the one with like the caterpillars smoking.
Yes.
And so it has like the maze and stuff like that. So like literally for an hour, I just stood in front of this poster and I like traced every possible way that this maze could possibly go. And like every kind of path went back into that pipe. And so then like after I turned, she's like, I'm done. And then she's like, you're done with what? And I'm like, drugs just lead to drugs. There's no other path. I'm done. And I like literally never did anything else after that because it was just like, that was my whole epiphany. I don't know.
That might be the most positive experience I've ever heard from somebody robo tripping.
That was like it.
That's so funny. I was about to say that is the single worst trip I've ever
Yeah,
heard.
that's what I was
That is
thinking.
the worst case scenario of getting really high that it convinced you to never get high again.
Steve Jobs
Yeah.
did a lot of acid, and it worked out all right for him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It works different on everybody.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think the last time I did mushrooms, I went
Yesterday.
to see Harry Potter alone. No, it's been a long time. I went to see the last Harry Potter movie in a theater alone because no one else wanted to go to the theater, and I was like, I'm going to do this. So I went to Man's Chinese Theater, you know, the one with the handprints in Hollywood.
Yeah.
I rode my bike there, you know, responsible. And I watched it pretty high. And the thing is, that movie opens with with a lot of little people. You know, they play the dwarves in the bank. And I realized that, like, I wasn't, like, freaked out by the Harry Potter and the dragons and stuff. I was freaked out, like, by the realization that these are all just dwarves in makeup. That was my main problem. But the weird thing was, it was coming home after the movie ended, and I was still really high. And I got in this weird mood because it's a pretty bad neighborhood at some points. Like, there's a lot, just not bad, but like there's a lot of like people like asking for change and heroin addicts and stuff.
It's like the Times Square of LA.
Yeah, it's exactly like Times Square. And I'm kind of looking around. And I was on the phone with people, and I was just like, I gotta be honest. I really want to get into a fight right now. And I never wanted to get in a fight in my life. I'm not a violent person. I don't get in fights. But I was like walking around, like, I gotta say, I'm feeling a really right mood for this.
You're the only person that smokes pot and wants to fight.
Well, that was
It
mushrooms.
mushrooms, yeah.
Oh.
And I didn't want to fight. I just felt like I felt more ready for it than ever. And a guy I knew in college beat up 3 cops on mushrooms. So that sort of makes me believe that it really does give you powers.
Yeah. It can. You're very susceptible
Powers to go to jail.
You're very susceptible to energy. So
Well, if you win.
if you get some negative energy in there, you never know what could happen.
It was it felt very positive. I was not going to fight anyone on purpose. I was just having the moment where I was like, you know, if it's ever going to happen, I will fucking kill somebody right now. And the worst part was I'm walking past people and I'm making like eye contact them. And I'm like, as far as you are from me right now. And I'm looking, just walking about on my phone being like, I would fuck this guy up.
You should be careful because you're not a big guy.
I got to be honest. I think I would have won. I really believe in myself on this.
Hey, power of a positive attitude, you know?
Yeah.
So, Peter, how have you been?
I've been good. I haven't been to Temecula by choice. But you know, it sounded great. You know, next time I want to get high around kids, I'll go out there. But no, I did go out west. I was just in San Francisco, and I went like in the 1 month window when it wasn't on fire.
Oh, that's
Oh,
nice.
wow.
It's burning again, right? That was in the
Yeah.
news today.
Yeah.
There's
It's burning. Oh, yeah.
the whole area.
You know, it's funny. San Francisco just came up because somebody was Tucker Carlson was talking about the homeless people there, and he was calling them zombie mobs. And someone was trying to use this as like an example. They were attacking liberals with this, and I was like, I don't see how calling them zombies is defending them. It was like the idea they were trying to say, like, oh, well, Tucker cares about the homeless. I'm like, no, he doesn't.
Yeah.
He's just calling them mobs of
It
zombies.
doesn't sound flattering. Though the homeless situation in San Francisco is definitely out of control.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
It is an amazing influx of, I mean, they're the most brazen homeless I've ever seen.
I lived there for 4 years, and when I went back to my old apartment on Folsom Street in the Mission, and it's just lined with people in tents. And meanwhile, the people in houses and apartments are paying exorbitant rents. And you come out of your apartment, then there's just people just hanging out and living in tents.
Yeah, my sister used to live in the Mission, and I would like visit her, and then you would go downstairs at night, and the second you walk outside, there would be like just, obviously like drug dealers and prostitutes and pimps just walking around.
And there's so much money in that city. There's such a disparity.
You don't see that in a lot of cities where like the street crime is in such a high rent area.
They need to push it all in one area like every other city.
Mm-hmm. Well, I used to work for the LA Homeless Coalition.
Uh-huh.
And we would
That's a great example in LA. Downtown LA is like Burning Man zombie wasteland.
Yeah, we have a shanty town. We have a literally called Skid Row.
Yeah.
Where funny story by the way about Skid Row. Buddy I know, this guy was at a UFC fight, this older man. He was talking about how, his life is great now, but in the 80s he was a crackhead. And he was like, I got a funny crackhead story because I hang out at the Smell, which is right by Los Angeles Street in LA. It's a great like punk venue, but you have to walk past, the shanty town to park your car. And he was like, yes, I was there, and some shirtless blonde guy walks up to me and asks where the heroin is. And I was like, oh, heroin's down, that way. And my buddy goes, he starts walking away, and my buddy goes, oh, there's no way he was going to make it all the way to 7th Street. And the guy said to me, he goes, well, he definitely made it, because I'm telling you right now, that was definitely Iggy Pop. Walking shirtless through Los Angeles Street, scoring heroin.
Man, you think you'd at least have a delivery person by now.
Yeah. Well, it's the 80s. I'm going to go ahead and say he's still walking streets looking for heroin. No offense, Iggy. Respect your music.
So, Gary, how have you been?
I've been good. I recently got passed at LOL Comedy Club, which is a comedy club in Times Square, New York.
Congrats.
Thanks. It's been quite an experience. It's pretty much like touring mainstream America without leaving.
Yeah.
Because it's mostly tourists.
Yeah.
It's mostly tourists. But it's a particular kind of tourist. It's the kind of tourist that books a flight, arranges a place to stay, and comes to New York and then has no plans. And they're just wandering around Times Square buying comedy tickets off a homeless person that's telling them Tina Fey's going to be there tonight and Chris Rock. Oh,
I've literally been in Times Square on a Saturday night and had someone say, hey, do you want to come to our comedy show? Jay Farrow and Pete Davidson are on it. And I'm like, they're both on SNL tonight.
And they don't do stand-up.
Well, they do.
Oh, they do
do stand-up.
Tina Fey doesn't.
Right. But yeah, you're right. They will literally just say anyone.
Anybody. Yeah.
Like they will tell you Richard Pryor is headlining tonight with Bill Hicks.
I've had people like yell at me at Broadway because they were like, well, someone told me Richard Pryor is going to be here tonight. And I'm just like, unless we do a seance, I don't think so. And they're just like, what are you talking about? I'm like, he's been dead for years. And they're like, well, I want my money back. I'm like,
I mean, they should get their money back. It's blatantly lying. That is a crime. It is bait and switch if you're literally telling people that someone's not going to be there. It's just something that we all know.
They're dead.
I was say, if you don't know that the person you're going to see and excited about seeing died 10 years ago or 20 years ago,
it's on you.
That's really on you.
Fault.
It's still a crime, but you know what? Sometimes it can be a crime and still be entirely your fault.
But then you could be like, you just found out he's dead and you care about your tickets?
Yeah, you should be mourning.
That's a great response to that.
You should be upset.
Yeah.
Heartless.
Go mourn him in the back row over there.
So a lot going on in the news today.
Every day.
I know.
Yeah, we can get started on on the exciting stories of the day if you'd like. We do have a lawyer. We're supposed to have two, right?
Right.
Now you are a lawyer.
I am.
What kind of law do you practice?
Did
you?
No, so I still am. I still until comedy starts paying my bills, I just ride it out, the struggle. But I'm in civil litigation, so just lawsuits and
Well, that's fun.
that's it. It's hell on earth, but it's really
But the litigation must be fun. That means you actually get some court time. You actually get some.
So I think I do what everybody expects lawyers to do,
Right.
which
you
is
actually.
Yeah, which is not what most lawyers do, honestly. Litigation is increasingly not what lawyers do. Like, it's all corporate. I mean, every time you turn on the news and there's an $80 billion buyout, you got to figure.
It's kind of similar to stand-up comedy. You're basically selling your story.
Yeah, it's all a show, and it's a show. In every time that you talk to anybody, it's like if you're. The one thing that litigation has is a very clear adversary. So I'm always gonna have an enemy in any case.
Like the audience.
Exactly. So and it's
that is what comedy is. It is us versus them.
And especially especially when they think they bought tickets to Pryor. That's a real us versus them moment. But yeah, so it's all a show. You know, you always have to be on. You never want to let anybody see behind the curtain and realize that you don't know what the hell you're doing at all. But
yeah. Now, one story we wanted to get into. It's not really the biggest story right now, but Mexico, of course, has a new president, and Obrador, I believe is how you say his name. I've only read it. I haven't heard it, so feel free to tell me on Twitter how stupid I am. But yeah, Mexico has elected a fairly left-wing populist president. And I guess the question is, would this have happened if not for Trump kind of forcing Mexico's hand of having to respond to him trying to basically hardball Mexico as just because he felt that they were a valid scapegoat for his own problems?
I think so. I think it would have, because I think globally most countries are becoming very populist. And he's kind of like, from what I've read, he's like the leftist version of Donald Trump. Like if Donald Trump was Mexican. So he's like very...
Which I'm sure is in several ways insulting to Obrador. Because it's one of those things where you take one thing about Trump and say, well, this makes you like Trump. And it's like, well, there's a lot of other things that Trump's known for that are much worse than this. Than just being, nice to crowds.
Yeah.
He grabs women by the heart.
Yes. Yeah. Tickles their soul. But he's been in Mexican politics for a while, and I guess he's never really, like, he's been around, but he's never really picked up that much popularity. But I think that he was campaigning on the same thing, as that, like, destroy the system, like, I guess maybe he's like if Trump and Bernie like had a child.
Well, I mean, really, he's much closer to just Bernie because he is a populist. He wants to be anti-corruption, and he wants to lower the salaries of the richest people and create less of a wage gap. I mean, everything he's saying is fairly normal politically. But it's the way that he campaigns, and that it just seems like this is a natural reaction to when you have a right-wing bully, that you're going to get more people extreme to the other direction. And it's sort of what I expected to happen when Trump started doing this whole routine of trying to just sort of use almost mob boss mentality and bully everyone out. You're going to get people pushing back really hard.
But I think you'd almost expect them to go right wing in their own country, though. Like, I think this reaction to the left is not normal for an anti-Trump Mexican politician. And I think if you really look at his rise, I think you have to look at the increase in violence that's really swept through Mexico in the last year. Just this election cycle, dozens of candidates were targeted, and I think it was somebody will write to the podcast and have the actual figure, I feel like, but I want to say close to a dozen candidates were killed, including some of the most liberal.
Yeah.
So this push to the left, I mean, Mexico has been fairly conservative and fairly right-wing for decades, largely at the U.S.'s influence. And like, we've really pushed them to stay to the right in terms of their policies, and really drove our own border to the Mexico southern border under Obama. So I think that, if anything, the vacuum from Trump sort of almost pulling out of Mexico and saying, we're just going to police our own border, and that's our line in the sand now, has left a vacuum that like the liberals in Mexico could finally capitalize on.
And you would think the increase in crime would help the right wing of Mexico.
Well, I mean, if you look at the institutions that are funneling or fueling the crime, whether it's like the military or the police, I mean, those are the traditional right-wing
organizations. Yeah.
So.
Well, it seems as though, I mean, Mexico does have a much bigger problem with corruption than America does. At least if you look at what's come out. I mean, you don't have a lot of stories about, the American government colluding with high-level drug dealers to murder students. I mean, there's a very serious problem in Mexico in terms of the amount of power that cartels have in government that just simply doesn't exist here.
Well, there was I can't remember what province in Mexico, but they're like this governor.
I'm going to guess Nogales, because everything's Nogales, but go on.
But like he's one of the Duartes, because they have a few governors that are Duartes, but like allegedly, like he was in cahoots with like, I guess, Mexican big pharma to give like these kids that I think they had like cancer or something like that. But basically he was like charging them like exorbitant amount of money, or their parents exorbitant amounts of money to get medication for their cancer, and just selling them all placebo. And so like, and it ended up being like maybe hundreds of millions of dollars that they made, like giving these sick kids just like placebo and thinking that they were buying real drugs.
Well, that makes me happy, because at least that's something that I know that America's also done. Because that at least I feel better about that. Because I was saying all these things about Mexico, and it's like, oh no, we've totally done that to people too.
Yeah, but in America, at least we try to keep it to like the Cialis customers.
Right. But I'm trying to remember the name of the drug, but there's a very famous example of where basically a lot of people stopped taking antipsychotics just because they were like, you know what, let's just see if this one works. It was like some drug that had nothing to do with it. I wish I had the names off the top of my head. But there was a lot of cases of that where they would just start pushing drugs and say, we think this drug might work for this. And then people just stop taking the drugs that keep them sane. So, you know, that's almost like the quaint kind of corruption. That's like the acceptable corruption that we all sort of say is okay, that we accept as part of like business as usual. And then it's the things like the, you know, murdered buses of children that really get things going, which just sucks because, you know, that should also be a story.
The alarming thing is that the governments are going extreme either way. Whether you're a righty or a lefty, It's alarming. Because moderates are just kind of more, makes me feel a little better.
It is a very, very dangerous precedent that moderates don't exist on either side, and that Trump's influence is making it so that only extreme leftists can win also, because it creates, I mean, isn't that a completely untenable way to run any kind of government?
And what's the pendulum answer to that? More extreme right.
Well, the pendulum answer to that is democratic socialists, who are, I think, far preferable to Trump Republicans, but it's still going to create a problem of less is going to be able to get done because you have less daylight. You have more daylight between the two parties, and there's less they can even compromise on. So I think we are probably permanently screwed.
I think we might be permanently screwed until we get something straightened out with Fox News and misinformation in general, because we can't even agree on facts anymore.
Well, that's true. Is that like when there's no center, because like at least we had a rudder with the truth, and like no matter what party you were on, like you could say like, all right, well, this is the truth. Like we now know there were no weapons of mass destruction. We fucked up, and we could get behind, okay, we fucked up. Let's not let this happen again. But now it's just like, well,
it's funny you use that example, because that is the example, I think, of what catalyzed this break from reality. The weapons of mass destruction argument was something that no Republican at the end of the day could argue with. I mean, for years they did. For years, I mean, there were people saying we did find them because they just tried to kick the can and lie about that. But what really happened was, I truly believe that the reason that we have this degradation of the political system is resentment over how wrong they were about Bush. That the people who supported Bush in the Iraq War were so deeply resentful of the idea that they made such a bad decision that they emotionally needed for Barack Obama to be a failed presidency. And they created a false reality where he was.
But the scary thing is that Trumpers don't like Bush either. They don't like systems.
Well, they don't like America. They like Trump.
They don't like the government. They don't like Trump.
That's why they don't mind when Trump makes personal money off of his job as president, because they're on his side, not America's side.
I've never seen such demagoguery before. They just like a person, not a system or a strategy. They just
it's cartoonish cultism.
It's definitely very scary.
All right, so not to pull us back from the brink of Armageddon conversation here. I actually think that it's a little bit less severe than it sounds right now. Don't get me wrong. I think it's going to get a lot worse in the near future. I was reading today that this could be the first election where you have like the deep fake videos where you have actually President Obama saying things that he never said in video form.
Right.
They already do that. They edit it together and people think it's true.
Well, that was just the Jordan Peele's example, but we have not seen a literal fake quote from a president that was done for that purpose, and we will.
But so like just using pure like AI and video editing techniques, they can now create videos where it looks and sounds like Obama is telling you something that he never said and doesn't support.
Right.
And so that could be this election's Facebook.
Right.
And but I do think overall, I think what you've seen is people lose faith in their ability to affect the institutions. So the people who really care are the people that are the most extremes at the most extreme points of view, because they're the ones who are willing to fight and have their voice heard. If you're actually a moderate, which I do think there are a lot of moderates left in the world,
maybe they're just not very vocal.
You've lost faith in the idea that your vote counts. And honestly, if you're a liberal moderate, your vote actually does count less than a conservative moderate.
By a lot, yeah. Well, we have a very serious gerrymandering problem, and that's separate from the electoral college problem, where someone in Wyoming has 3 times as many votes as someone in New York, which is a broken system. We're very close right now to getting more votes for Democrats in the House and still having less seats. And that would create a precedent where consistently one party gets more votes and the other party retains power, which is the kind of thing that without a violent revolution, I don't know how that changes.
Well, so, I mean, the way it changes is that the Supreme Court steps in, which it just punted down the road on that case.
They're not going to.
Wisconsin case. But I think that they might. And I think that the reason I say they might is because essentially, kind of looking at it long term, the Supreme Court doesn't want to get out in front of any issues. Like they did it with Roe v. Wade, and they've essentially got chastised into never doing that again. So they're just going to wait until it's at a crisis point, and you're starting to see things like reactionaries on the left getting violent again, like Weather Underground style tactics from the was it the 70s?
Yeah.
At that point, when they say, "Oh, well, all of this is actually traceable to gerrymandering," and the 2020 census has this like exponential increase in Republicans across the board because their software was better and they controlled like 60% of the state houses across the country, then you might see the court weigh in and say, okay, this is too far. They've already said it's unconstitutional, partisan gerrymandering. They just have never ruled anything unconstitutional because, according to them, the dumb federal district court judges who are only Harvard and Yale educated and appointed by the president couldn't possibly fathom the standards that the Supreme Court had handed down, which I think is always funny when they say that.
Now, just to make sure everyone understands, what you basically just said was, if you want things to get better, you got to start committing terrorism.
Yeah, exactly. I don't want anybody to.
Now, I don't know if you know the weather. I don't know how much people know the Weather Underground, but they didn't kill people. They blew up things, which, by the way, we should respect.
But occasionally those things had a person or two in them.
Well, to be fair, the only people who actually died due to the Weather Underground were people by accident who were, thank God, members of the Weather Underground.
Yeah.
So let's give them the respect. Hey, if you blow yourself up trying to make a bomb, that's your business. It's just like I'm not gonna treat somebody who shoots a rival gang member the same as someone who shoots like.
But didn't the police department blow up an entire block trying to get the Weather Underground?
They blew up a house. Calm down.
Well, it was a little more than that. It was a little more than that.
Well, I think you're referring. I assumed you were referring to Move, which of course is different than Weather Underground. That was more of a Black Panther offshoot. The Mumia, where Mumia Abu Jamal lived, and the Philadelphia police blew up their house.
Yeah.
When they dropped that bomb.
Yeah, they bombed. Yeah, they bombed.
When, the time the police just flew in a bomb.
Bombed a whole city block.
And by the way, before drones, let's show a little respect to the Philly police. They did it back before you could just pick up a remote control and do it. So.
And they did it while eating a hot dog.
I mean, have you been to Philly? I feel like once you've spent more than a day and a half there, you agree that the normal rules of law and order don't apply.
Philly was very strange, like very, very strange. It just.
Well, I mean.
So what you're saying is that Philly deserved to get bombed.
What I'm saying is that it should have been fair, and they should have bombed all the houses. Yes, just bombing the ones of Move was wrong, not the activists. Now, of course, you said you didn't enjoy Philly, Marissa, and our audience probably doesn't know. Marissa is black. If that explains why Philly didn't go great for you.
You went 2 weeks, Dave. I was so proud of you.
No, I said it last week.
No, you didn't.
I'm almost 100% sure I said it. I try not to let an episode go by without it. But that's the thing about Philly. Like, Philly and Boston are basically there to show us that, the South are not the only racist places in America.
Well, that's just northern New York. Like, I went to Lake George, not last summer, but the summer before, and I have never been so uncomfortable in, like, I was more comfortable in Alabama than I was in, like, Lake George. Like, first off, every single house, like, Confederate flags. And it's just like
In the state of
of
New York.
Oh,
it's
yeah,
like,
it's-
do you realize you're in New York? Like, this is not like
You're literally Yankees.
you are Yankees, and it's just like Confederate flags everywhere. It was like Hillary posters everywhere. It was Trump shit everywhere. Like, I had people like I was with my ex-boyfriend at the time. We took one of these scenic cruises, and this guy was like, he looked like a neo-Nazi. He was like goose stepping in front of us to the point where his wife was just like, leave them alone. They're just trying to enjoy the sights. He's like, what? I'm not doing anything. And just like goose stepping and literally like turning on his heel to like go back the other direction. And I'm like, and it was like part of the reason I was like, if anything ever happens, like, he's never going to be able to protect me. I'm like literally going to be the one that's going to have to go south.
It's actually the
Yonkers.
saddest thing about that is that I bet this guy would never have done that if it was a black guy and a white girl. Only white guy, black girl does he have the balls to start doing that shit.
I think that if it was like a more intimidating white guy, he probably wouldn't have.
I mean, I think there is like, I mean, talk about being sore winners of the Civil War. I guess upstate New York does get very Confederate flag heavy once you get north
Yeah.
of like Poughkeepsie.
I think
Yeah.
anywhere you go that is away from a city,
Yeah,
you
it
start
gets
to
real.
see more Republican sort of conservatism.
But I also think that's not even conservative.
No, it's like
that's
white
just,
nationalism.
Yeah, that's just pure. Like I think that there is this weird blending that's happened on the left where like we've started using terms that gloss over what's really happening. And I'm like, no, that's just racism. Like he's not goose stepping because he was like, oh, I'm really proud of like the 1932 to 1938 Nazi Party
Well,
in
it's just-
Germany. When
yeah, it's just
like-
human nature, fear of the unfamiliar. You know, they don't come into contact with people of different races, so they're scared of them.
But it's like he's saying the reason that this guy is goose stepping is not because he knows anything about Germany and Nazi Party. It's because if you're an asshole and you want to hurt people and you just hate people who don't look like you embody the Nazi Party, which is where Trump's coalition comes from. That they're all embracing this idea of I just hate the world and I just want someone to punish it.
Well, I also think the guy that was goose stepping probably thought he was the victim. Like, there's no way that guy's out there in his own narrative. He's like, no, I'm just the racist piece of shit in this moment. He's out there and he's like, oh, I'm having a tough experience in my life and I'm going to just act out like I'm a 6-year-old who pushed over a kid on the playground. And the way he does it is through racism and just invoking the most violent images he can turn up, which are like the Confederate flag, goose stepping, Nazi propaganda. And like, that's really coming out across the board now. And I think that there has to be a link between that and like the rise in suicide and substance abuse deaths among white America.
Well, I think that the substance abuse does directly relate to racism, honestly, because I think that we have a sort of tipping point where maybe almost half of Americans have diminished capacity. And I think all people who are not thinking clearly start to slide into conspiracy theories and the dumber ideologies like neo-Nazism or just general trust in everything Trump says. I'm not even trying to like make it like you're a Nazi if you like Trump, but look, there's something going on here where he's taking advantage of them.
I'll say you're a Nazi if you like Trump. But they just finished doing a study that actually said that there was like a higher rate of drug abuse in Trump voters than there were in Hillary voters.
I mean, I
which
think
kinda,
that's common sense.
Yeah, which I mean kind of goes to your point, and this goes back to my point of instead of IDs at voting facilities, we need to start drug testing
Well,
these
I
people.
disagree with that.
You
but-
can disagree with that. This is
What are you gonna test
my
for?
own. This is my own soapbox. But my feeling is if you can't legally drive a car, you shouldn't be legally voting.
I mean, well,
That'll hurt.
because you're high, like currently.
Yeah.
Oh, I was gonna say because like,
I think if you try to go and vote and you're under the influence, I don't think you should be able to vote.
Well, under the influence of what? Because
And
the
at
biggest
that
problem is
moment-
opiates, which half these people are on legally.
But would they be able to legally drive a car?
Sure.
They-
On
if-
opiates? Yeah.
They have
The
a
people
If
on
they were-
prescription opiates can drive cars. Yeah.
If you're under the
that's not entirely true.
Maybe
I
you
mean,
shouldn't.
No, it's if you're under the influence, then you can't.
Well,
It's-
yeah.
there are some people who take what they refer to, maybe it's a small dose, something that's in the system. But if you're, and that it comes back to like, I mean, that's why you get field sobriety tests, because if you're falling over in the street because you're
Right. The term under the influence would mean under enough of it that it is
it's
affecting
illegal.
it's
But that's-
impairing your ability to drive.
That's not how
Right.
drug tests work, though. They don't test for you with drugs in your system in the past hour or two.
They're just testing. Can you touch your finger to your nose and how much of a capacity you have at the time? I mean, look, I think that I don't want to take anyone's, voting rights away for, doing drugs. But yeah, we do have an issue where it does seem like.
Well, they take them away if you're black and live in the wrong area.
I think it's a bigger
like
problem.
if you don't have a birth certificate, there are nuns that can't vote because they don't have birth certificates. So I'm perfectly fine with a bunch of drug addicts not being able to vote.
I mean, I think undiagnosed schizophrenia is an overall bigger problem for voting, but I can't really take those people's votes away either.
What do you think would happen if the 50% of Americans that didn't vote in 2016 actually turned out in 2020?
Well, I think that's the biggest question, right? Is that
who are they and what do they want?
What's the thing?
I think that's all the drug addicts.
Everyone, you couldn't turn up because you were so high. No, I think especially if you're on the left, the biggest thing you want is more voting, not less. Like across the board, like it's the left's votes that are getting constricted. And
that's why you cut down on the drug addicts, because then you start cutting it to the right's votes.
Or we could just expand it for everybody and just let the numbers play out as they go. And I think the easiest way to do that would be make Election Day a national holiday, which is ridiculous that it's not.
The very idea you have to take off work to vote is such a...
Yeah, but you don't have to take off work for Labor Day, a holiday that nobody understands.
Right. And make it more than one day. You don't make voting...
Early voting.
Why can't it just... I mean, we don't even have to have a new day off. Just make it one of the holidays we already have.
Well, that would require a constitutional amendment.
Well, sure, but I mean,
that
in the long run, it would still help.
That would be tough right now.
But yeah, the idea that you have that, people who can't take off work can't vote kind of seems like it's designed to keep poor people from voting.
Exactly. And the fact that felons are disenfranchised after they get out of prison, after their debt to society is paid, is a direct attack at poor people at this point. Because, I mean, look who goes to jail.
Maybe that's a worthy social movement. Get all the companies, corporations to give all the workers that day off. Maybe we don't need a constitutional amendment.
I think that...
I don't trust them to do that. I'd rather have it be a law.
Well, isn't that the saddest thing, though, that your first thought was corporations doing this rather than that Congress could get their shit together and do it at all?
Starbucks did it over a bathroom, Well,
Starbucks did it over a really bad PR day. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And it's not clear that people liked that. Like, they got a lot of heat for that.
No, I couldn't get Starbucks that day. I was pissed.
For like that 3-hour window, you were like, I need my cappuccino. Like, race relations can wait.
But you keep going back to like the Constitution, the Supreme Court, and Trump might be, or probably is, going to be nominating another justice. And granted, Roe v. Wade is obviously the big bullseye, but like what other things can we look?
Trump is going to base this on one thing. Did that judge say anything about the rights to indict a president? That's what he's picking a Supreme Court justice on. It's really goddamn scary. And I don't even know if someone's making sure that he's not having private conversations with these judges, because that right off the bat is such an invitation to obstruct justice.
Right. He already has been interviewing.
He has been.
Yeah, he said he's been. We know he's been interviewing them. Have those been private interviews?
So usually, I'm not sure how it would usually be done. I know it's very normal for presidents to interview judges. I think usually
normal doesn't matter anymore. There has to be laws, because people are always like, "Oh my God, it's not normal what he's doing."
The president's not usually a criminal,
right? But then you find out, well, there's no law against it. Like the whole not showing his tax returns. There should be a law that a president has to show his tax returns.
But that's across the board. I mean, I think that in any country where the default is it not being illegal, because so there's not to go too far afield from what we're talking about. In the U.S., like there's a default. It's not illegal if it's not caught in a code saying it's illegal to do X.
But we can no longer say it's not normal for Trump to do that.
No, but I think
that's what people like about him, that he's breaking the norms.
Sure, but like I mean, it goes beyond politics, right? Because like Martin Shkreli, pharma
Trump Jr.
Yeah.
Well, when he was prosecuted, he wasn't prosecuted for raising the price of all that drug that he bought. He was prosecuted for insider trading, because jacking up the price of drugs is not illegal.
Right.
And so it does go across the board. Like society and finance loves to claim, oh, we'll self-regulate and we'll have norms and the customers are our check. And it's the exact same argument that politics always had, that voters are our check and that we have norms. And so I think that's identical arguments. And so that's the reason I go into that one. But
and that's why populism is so dangerous. When you go pure populism will lead to just mobs.
Well, I think that traditionally the Supreme Court was supposed to be, and the courts in general were supposed to be checks on populism.
Yeah.
The Senate was too, but only until the 20s when they started getting elected directly rather than appointed by the governors, or however that used to work. I think it was you were appointed by the governor. But
what law school did you go to?
It was an online school. I'm also a minister.
Phoenix.
He went to Columbia with two O's.
yeah. Going to the knockoff Columbia. No, so in terms of Trump picking the next justice, I think that Roe v. Wade is already pretty much bad law. Like the protections in Roe v. Wade were really whittled down, and so like if you want to play that forward, like the real case that is defining abortion rights now is actually Planned Parenthood v. Casey. And that's, I don't know if it's kind of further down. It doesn't make the headlines that often. But the undue burden standard really only exists in abortion law. And it's Justice O'Connor's old brainchild that has been applied so inconsistently because nobody knows what it means. It doesn't have a definition, and courts have really interpreted it however they want. And it's an undue burden on the right to access abortion is the test. And I think that what could happen is he doesn't have to appoint somebody that's come out and said, oh, like abortions should be illegal, because I don't think that they could do that at this point. I think that would just be such a fissure in society.
That's why there's so much interest in law right now, because these norms and whatever, no one even knows what's going on anymore. So we have to figure out what are the actual laws.
It's also fair to say, just from a political standpoint, that the Republican Party does not actually want abortion illegal because they will lose all their donations. If they lose abortion as a political football, they lose a giant part of why people vote Republican to make abortion illegal. Mm-hmm. Sorry, go on.
No, I think that's true. I think that is. Well, I think part of it is understandable, right? If you think abortion is truly murder of a child, you should care a lot about it. Like I think it was Louis C.K. who did a bit about that exact topic, where it was like, yeah, I'd probably be pretty upset about that if that's what I believed. But the question is that, like, because the standard is so ill-defined, and there's only like a few cases on it from the Supreme Court ever, there was one actually recently, only a couple of years ago, that was actually a pretty strict. It was in it. If you read it, it sounds very strict, but the actual ruling was not. So it was Justice Breyer, who's a liberal member of the court, writing it. So even in that moment, it just wasn't in practice that hard to put hurdles between women and abortion.
So now, what is, like, if you could just kind of brass tacks, what is an undue burden? Is it
that's the problem.
that
Well,
like,
that's the $1 million question,
right? So like, is it that you have to drive 100 miles to get there? Is it that you had to wait 3 days to get it? Is it that you have to, talk to your husband or your lover or your parents in order?
So that was actually what was struck down not that long ago. In Planned Parenthood v. Casey was a spousal notification requirement, and they held that was unconstitutional. Fast forward, and you get the Texas laws. I think it was I forget the name of the case now. Where every abortion provider has to have essentially outpatient hallways where it's like 16 feet wide or whatever that.
Right, to bankrupt them, basically.
Essentially, yeah, they'd have to do massive overhauls. And the Supreme Court struck that down in part, but it did a somewhat good job doing it. It really looked into the details of it and essentially said, well, you're 28 times more likely to die in liposuction or something along those lines than abortion. So what is the real benefit here?
Now, didn't Ruth Bader Ginsburg oppose Roe v. Wade for the specific reason that it didn't go far enough? I read something about that she disagreed in the idea that she said if we had not made this decision, things could have gone further where we did get a definitive answer onto abortion, and that it could have and that states could have one by one done it the same way, sort of that gay rights happened, where it would have been much more of a less divisive issue, whereas the way that Roe v. Wade came about gave these anti-abortion people a real galvanizing moment, and they've been using that ever since to try to get people to say, if you care about nothing but abortion, vote for the Republican Party. Yeah. And if you don't care about anything else that we do, this is the one issue, like guns, where you will vote against your best interest for this one issue.
Right.
Democrats don't have single issue votes so much.
Well, I think that increasingly abortion, but and just in general women's rights. I think that you don't have to look too far back to see just like kind of blatant sexism, and by too far back I mean like today. But I do think. Sorry, just to go back to what you were saying a second ago about Ginsburg. Obviously, she was on the Supreme Court back then.
I just mean that I've heard her say that it was a mistake.
I think that I think a lot of people have come out and said it was a mistake because it was a very divisive holding. But you kind of have to put yourself back in the mindset of the judges making it, and you were coming off the heels of really only 20 years of progressive courts. We're talking about landslide changes from. Used to have I can't come up with the word right now, where you could not have interracial marriages. And
right.
That
misogyny.
And thank you.
That wasn't that the Loving case?
Yeah. Loving the Virginia or Texas, just pick your red state.
It was an anti-loving case.
Yeah. And so, that was only, that was 15 years before Roe v. Wade. So in 15 years, you saw this massive progression, and it's the same thread, I should say. So it's this notion that there's this privacy and intimacy to marriage, and there's this sort of recognition of a constitutional right to have a sexual relationship, which is not in the Constitution, but that they found this right to privacy in sort of this amorphous way. And
Tell that to the incels.
I mean, honestly, if anything seems implied by what is it, the Ninth Amendment, it would seem right to sex.
Yeah, but and you don't have to go. A lot of states had laws against sodomy, which were only enforced against homosexual couples
until 2005. And that's how long ago this stopped happening.
And so, how else are Christians going to preserve their virginity, though?
That's a good point.
It's worked for Mike Pence. But the issue is just that same thread that carried them through from what I think are widely recognized as good decisions in privacy, in terms of anti-miscegenation laws and things like that. You end up with Roe v. Wade very logically. And so it carried through in 15 years. It's very fast. And I think that looking back on it, people are like, oh, well, the country wasn't ready. And the court, I think that if you would ask the judges from that court, would have said, we're not basing this on public opinion. This is just what we think is entailed in this thing that we're starting to define. This the right to have sex implies the right to manage your own reproductive health. And so it is odd now to see 45 years later, as every other right has seemed to progress, that this fight over abortion, and I think in part because people don't understand what abortion is. Nobody knows what it means to have an abortion. It's such a taboo topic to talk about that nobody addresses the difference between abortion, which is very similar to Plan B, where you take a pill, and that's the extent of it, and that is really the vast majority of abortions, versus abortions which are much more surgical and where it is a real procedure, and that's where you start to see
liposuction of the vagina.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, when people talk about partial birth abortions, which are an extremely small percentage and only done under specific medical circumstances, the whole idea is that, look, I mean, I really do think that the right plays with truth a lot more than the left, and they consistently use dishonesty and the idea of trying to manipulate people who don't really know. They want people to believe that all these abortions are being done are being done like in the hell houses that Mike Huckabee would prop up, and where we're just a vacuum and just a completely blood-soaked room, because they don't want people to be told that the vast majority of abortions are no different than what a woman does when she has her period. She's flushing out a fertilized egg that's not going to make it to full term.
And how do they feel about Plan B?
They're against it.
They're against it also.
A lot of these people are against condoms because this isn't about life. This is about punishing whores.
I don't even think it's about that per se. I think that whenever we start getting to when we start as a country start getting to a point where whites are projected to be the minority in the country within the next, let's say, 20 to 50 years, then I feel like all of this anti-abortion, contraceptive thing comes into play, because I think it's a white supremacist, white nationalist ideal that women, they need to start producing more white children.
It has nothing to do with race. It has to do with religion.
I'm going to disagree, but I'm going to also say that this is another movement within the white nationalists and the white supremacists that they are doing stealthing. And if you read a lot of the these like alt-right blogs, they're telling men to stealth women, which is basically you have sex with a woman, you're wearing a condom, and right before you come, you take the condom off because they're trying to impregnate more white women because they want to increase the population of white people.
Does that work?
Stealthing?
Do they not notice? Because, I mean, it's sort of like... Because I hear this a lot.
Are you
I'm not
looking
making a joke.
for Saturday?
No, I'm not making a joke. What I'm trying to say is, I hear this a lot, this idea of men taking off condoms in the last second. Like, isn't there like a gigantic difference between how sex with and without a condom feels?
Yeah, but if that one pump is the pump that counts, then they're already
I mean, I get
fucked.
it. I get it. I guess I feel like I just don't. It surprises
not
me
like-
that it's
like,
not
oh,
like, hey,
like-
this sex just got significantly better.
And how is that even legal?
So
Well,
it's,
in
it's
some,
not legal.
In
It's
some
not.
states,
It's really
it's not. In some states, like there's really. Well, I'm going to defer to you for that.
no, so there's been a big push to make it illegal. It sort of fell into like the kind of revenge porny category of things that should obviously be illegal, but that might not be. I think it is illegal now in New York. I want to say. I think that I remember reading something about it, a law being passed or modified.
Yeah, but it's
I'm
not
sure-
illegal everywhere.
No, it's definitely not. It is. I should take that back. I think that it might be illegal in some way. I don't know that it wouldn't. It might not qualify as like rape or sexual assault everywhere.
Counts as breaking and entering.
But I mean, I do think it's.
Forced impregnation.
I was gonna say it is. I now that you mention it, I feel like I have heard of somebody saying that like the alt-right movement. I also think there's like this weird. I mean, intersectionality always comes up on the left, but there's an intersectionality of racist and misogynist, and it's like a very close Venn diagram.
And they're doing such a better job of the intersectionalism than we are.
Yeah, it just seems to go so much more naturally there. But I do think that, I mean, going back to your point about like the racial component to reproductive health, the Times did a huge article not that long ago about how if you're Black or Hispanic in America, you're way more likely to have a higher, your infant mortality rate is through the roof compared to white women. You're more likely to meet the doctor delivering your child on the day of the delivery. Like all of these things and I think there is a real class component to it in terms of preserving this sort of waspy upper crust to America that really I think even uneducated, poor white people cling to, that like, oh, well, I could aspire to that because at least I'm not that.
Right.
And there's that otherness to it.
Well, because poor white people are always reminding themselves that, I am like 2 weeks of hitting the books away from being a CEO somewhere.
Exactly.
Like they just know that like I could be something if I just tried.
I'm one lottery ticket away.
Well, I feel like poor white people have a real like bullied child syndrome where they're like, oh, well, I'm going to make poor Black people's lives way worse than mine because rich white people are stepping on me, so I need somebody below me to keep
And
down.
the shit rolls down.
Yeah, and so I think that's the history of America right there.
Right.
That's
But as far as the abortion issue, I don't think it has much to do with race as it has enough to do with religion.
I don't think it's a conscious decision. I think it is what it is. It's not like people are saying, because I'm white, I want to make sure there aren't abortions. It's because, I mean, there's the other side of that, which is one of the most dishonest arguments I've heard against abortion from people who just don't have a good one is the eugenics argument, where people try to claim that abortion was created to kill Black people. Mm-hmm. And the problem is the people who make that argument tend to hate Black people. So they're trying to tell Black people in bad neighborhoods, in poor neighborhoods, saying, "Oh, don't get an abortion. That's just white people wanting there to be less Black people." It's like, no, you just want more poor Black people, and you're just you're pretending you care about that because you just don't like abortion.
If you believe in the Bible, you just are against abortion.
Well, I'd also say that there are huge populations of Black people of color that are highly religious, and you never see them on this like pro-life tip. Like, when have you ever seen like these big mega church like Black?
Very against gay marriage. They were huge.
We're talking about abortion.
That's true, but that was another thing. Another thing where they went against.
It's the same religious thing.
Because you would think that a Black church would not support gay marriage or being pro-abortion when they know that it's cozying up to the side of politics that hates them, the side of politics that is much more comfortable with white supremacy.
Wait,
but
do you mean a book that was written like 3,000 years ago is now the vanguard of social movements? Like wait a minute.
For its time,
so.
it had some good ideas for its time.
Yeah. The
Not
stoning
even really.
sections didn't age well.
I'm
but,
still against mixing fabrics.
Yeah. no, sorry, I didn't mean to just take a
Yeah,
shot
yeah.
across the bow at religion altogether. But I mean, yeah, that's
that is a big. I hate to say it, but that's kind of the big enemy.
It also doesn't say anything about abortion in the Bible anyway. So I don't see. I mean, there isn't actually anything in the Bible about abortion, right?
No, and the thing that's so crazy is that like the first contraceptive was in Egypt, like around the time of Cleopatra, where they used to actually cut a lemon in half and insert it in the woman because they figured out that the lemon would change the pH balance and would kill sperm. So like that was like the first contraceptive was actually
the first
a lemon.
contraceptive was a picture of Cleopatra. Have you seen the coins with her face on them? She was the ugliest human being who ever lived. No, seriously. She was white and she was hideous.
Wait a minute. Let's not let this conversation go down without evaluating the sexual attractiveness of a woman that lived 3,000 years ago.
No, seriously.
Because, goddamn it, that is what we're here to talk about.
I'm going to bring up a picture of Cleopatra right now. I want you to see what a dog she was.
I mean, I'm sure she didn't have the Kim K booty, but I mean, do we need to say the woman was a dog? I mean,
Yes, we do, because that is one of the worst mistakes in world history. People think Cleopatra was hot, and I'm telling you, she was a heifer. Wait, watch.
Just to bring this up to being to par here, Mark Antony also hideously unattractive.
Oh my God, yeah, they looked alike too.
They he was also grotesque.
That's a coin of Cleopatra from her time, meaning she had to approve it.
Yeah, but if you show me a coin of somebody from our time, that looks great.
Yeah, but come on,
She looks Jewish with that nose.
Yes, she does. Well, she was Greek. She was Greek. She was ancestor of Ptolemy.
I'm wondering about the pain of that lemon. That sounds like it would burn.
Well, I mean, hopefully.
If you're dirty, I don't know if you know this, but Motley Crue would spray lemon on women's vaginas to see if they had any problems down there, and if they didn't wince, it meant they were safe.
That has to be a wives' tale. Not that Motley Crue, they definitely.
Oh no, they definitely did it. I'm not saying it worked.
It does not work.
I'm not saying that it works to no disease. Really, it just makes sure they don't have any open sores at the time, which is half the battle. We've all been there, guys.
So they're sterilizing the area before insertion.
I forgot where we started on this one. I'm gonna be honest.
Which sounds like a perfect time to take a break. So we will take a break and we'll be right back.